My son Marcus called bragging about his new penthouse in downtown Chicago, but his next words made my blood run cold. Dad, you're paying the $550,000 mortgage because we decided it's your responsibility. I refused, thinking it was some kind of joke. But when he and Jessica showed up at my door with legal documents and threats, I realized they were deadly serious. 3 months later, everything changed when the judge reviewed the evidence. No one expected what happened next. But 6 weeks earlier, everything had been different. Marcus had called on a Tuesday evening, his voice bright with excitement, the kind of energy that used to make me smile back when he was 12 and showing me his report card. The connection crackled slightly. He was probably driving, windows down, that reckless habit he'd never broken despite my warnings. Dad, you won't believe it, he'd said, and I could hear the grin in his voice. We got it. The penthouse. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the loop. Jessica's already planning where to put the furniture. The pride in his tone was unmistakable, the same pride I'd felt when I'd bought my first house, though mine had been a modest 3-bedroom ranch with a mortgage that kept me awake at night for years. That's wonderful, son, I'd said, genuinely happy for him. You and Jessica must have worked hard for this. The pause that followed should have warned me. A beat too long, a breath too careful. Actually, Dad, that's what I wanted to talk about. The mortgage. It's manageable, but we figured. Figured what? Well, you know, it's your responsibility. You've always helped us out. The kitchen had felt suddenly smaller. The afternoon light coming through the window above the sink, the same window I'd looked through for 32 years, seemed different, harsher. I'd stood there holding the phone, my free hand gripping the counter's edge, the formica cool and familiar under my palm. Marcus kept talking, his words tumbling out in a rehearsed rhythm that made my stomach tighten. The penthouse cost more than I'd made in 3 years. The monthly payment exceeded my mortgage by $2,000. He spoke about it casually, as if discussing whose turn it was to host Thanksgiving. Marcus, I'd interrupted, my voice steady despite the heat creeping up my neck. I'm not paying your mortgage. Dad, come on, don't be like this. I'm serious. Another pause. Longer this time. Then, we'll talk about this in person. You'll understand better when you see the place. He'd hung up before I could respond. I'd stood in my kitchen for 20 minutes after that call. The refrigerator hummed. The clock above the stove ticked. Outside, Mrs. Henderson's dog barked at something unseen. Normal sounds in a house that suddenly felt unfamiliar, as if the walls themselves had shifted while I wasn't looking. I thought about calling Marcus back, but my hand stayed where it was, still gripping the counter. I thought about the college tuition, $47,260 over 4 years. The car, a used Honda Civic, $12,800. The wedding deposit, $32,000 for a venue that Jessica had called intimate but elegant, though 200 guests didn't feel particularly intimate to me. The numbers lived in my head. I'd never forgotten them. Thursday afternoon, Marcus and Jessica showed up unannounced. I was in the garage, organizing tools I'd accumulated over decades, each one a memory of a project completed or abandoned. The screwdriver set from my father, the circular saw I'd bought to build Marcus's treehouse when he was 8, the hammer I'd used to hang pictures in every room of this house. Their car, a new Mercedes, sleek and black, pulled into the driveway at 3:15. I knew because I checked my watch, a reflex from 40 years of punctuality at a job that valued precision. Jessica emerged first. Heels clicked against the concrete. Louboutins, probably, though I wouldn't have known the brand if Marcus hadn't mentioned them last Christmas. She wore sunglasses despite the overcast sky, her hair pulled back in a way that emphasized the angles of her face. Marcus followed, carrying a leather bag that looked expensive and impractical. They didn't smile. They didn't wave. They walked toward me with the purposeful stride of people on a mission. We need to talk, Marcus said. Not hello, Dad. Not how are you, just straight to business. Come inside, I said, setting down the socket wrench I'd been holding. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Marcus had done his homework while I cooked dinner. The same table where I'd taught him to play chess and lost deliberately until the day I didn't have to anymore. Jessica placed the folder between us. Glossy, professional, the bank's logo embossed in gold. Marcus watched me, his expression unreadable, while Jessica opened the folder with manicured fingers. "These are the mortgage documents," she said. Her tone was businesslike, clinical. "We need you to co-sign. Given your history of support, it only makes sense." I looked at the papers. Numbers swam across the pages. Principal amount, interest rate, monthly payment. The total was staggering. $550,000 for an apartment I'd never seen. "I'm not co-signing anything." "Dad, no." Marcus leaned forward. His jaw clenched. A vein pulsed in his temple. "We're family. You want us to lose this place after everything you've done for us? After setting expectations?" Setting expectations. The phrase hung in the air like smoke. "I never agreed to this," I said quietly. "I helped you before because I wanted to. This is different." "How is it different?" Jessica's voice had an edge now, sharp. "You paid for his education, his car, our wedding. Why stop now?" "Because it has to stop somewhere." She closed the folder, slowly, deliberately. Her eyes never left mine. "We'd hate for this to get messy, David." "What does that mean?" Marcus stood. The chair scraped against the linoleum, a harsh sound that made my teeth ache. "It means we've been patient. It means we've given you chances. Don't say we didn't warn you." They left. The Mercedes backed out of the driveway too fast. Jessica's sunglasses reflected the gray sky. Marcus didn't look back. I sat at the table for an hour afterward, staring at the spot where the folder had been. The wood showed a faint ring where someone had once placed a hot cup without a coaster. The mark had been there for years. I'd stopped noticing it until now. My phone rang 3 times that evening. Marcus. I didn't answer. The 4th time I turned off the ringer. The legal papers arrived on a Monday. Certified mail. I signed for them at 8:17 in the morning, my hands steady despite the coffee I'd had on an empty stomach. The envelope was thick, official. Inside, 23 pages of allegations and demands that transformed our family history into a legal contract I'd allegedly broken. The lawsuit claimed I owed Marcus and Jessica $550,000. Verbal agreement, promissory estoppel, ongoing financial support based on established patterns. I read every page, twice, then a 3rd time, slower, making sure I understood each accusation. They claimed I'd promised to support their lifestyle indefinitely, that my previous gifts created an obligation, that refusing now constituted a breach of family duty and financial commitment. The language was formal, but the intent was clear: pay up or be destroyed. I called 3 lawyers before I found Rachel Martinez. Her office was in a building downtown, the kind of place where the elevator still had an operator and the floors creaked with history. She was 40-something, with gray streaks in her dark hair and reading glasses that hung from a chain around her neck. Her handshake was firm. Her eyes were shrewd. "Tell me everything," she said. So I did. The college tuition, the car, the wedding, the phone call about the penthouse, the kitchen confrontation, the threats. Rachel took notes on a yellow legal pad, her handwriting small and precise. She didn't interrupt. She didn't offer platitudes. When I finished, she set down her pen and looked at me over her glasses. "Do you have documentation of the money I gave them? Of everything, every payment, every conversation, every promise they made and broke?" I thought about the box in my closet, letters from Marcus, emails, text messages I'd never deleted because some part of me, the part that still remembered teaching him to ride a bike, couldn't let go completely. "Yes," I said. "I have documentation." "Good, we'll need it. All of it." I spent the next week going through that box. Each letter was a small knife. Marcus at 19, "Dad, I promise I'll pay you back. This is just a loan until I get on my feet." Marcus at 23, "The money you sent really helped. I won't forget this." Marcus at 26, "Jessica and I are so grateful. We'll make you proud." Empty promises wrapped in the kind of language that made me want to believe. I organized them chronologically. 37 letters spanning 15 years. A history of requests and reassurances that never materialized into actual repayment. Rachel also suggested hiring a financial investigator. Mike Chen, ex-IRS. He had the kind of face that forgot. Plain features, average height, the sort of person you'd pass on the street without a second glance. But his mind was a trap for numbers. He dug into Marcus's finances with methodical precision. Credit reports, bank statements, tax returns. What he found made my chest tight. Gambling debts, $43,000 across 3 casinos. Credit cards maxed out, 12 of them. Personal loans from friends that were never repaid. Marcus had been living on borrowed money and borrowed time for years, maintaining a facade of success that was as hollow as the promises in his letters. Jessica's situation was worse in a different way. Mike discovered she'd fabricated her employment history. The corporate position she'd claimed during the apartment application didn't exist. The references were fake, phone numbers that led to disconnected lines or friends willing to lie. She'd been unemployed for 8 months while spending money like she had a 6-figure salary. "This is fraud," Mike said, showing me the documents. "Multiple counts. If the bank knew, they don't?" "Not yet." I looked at the evidence spread across Rachel's conference table. Letters, financial records, proof of lies stacked inches high. Each piece represented a choice Marcus and Jessica had made, a decision to deceive, to manipulate, to treat family like a resource to be exploited. "We take this to court," Rachel said. "We show the judge exactly who filed this lawsuit. We let the evidence speak." The pretrial discovery was brutal. Rachel subpoenaed everything: bank records, text messages, emails between Marcus and Jessica. We found conversations where they discussed how to handle me, how to present their demands, how much to ask for and when. Jessica had written, "He's old school, guilt works, family obligation angle." Marcus had responded, "Let me try the direct approach first. If that fails, we go nuclear." They'd planned this, strategized, turned our relationship into a transaction they could optimize. I read those messages in Rachel's office on a Tuesday afternoon. The autumn sun slanted through the windows, casting long shadows across the floor. Outside, people walked by on their lunch breaks, laughing and talking, unaware that my world was condensing into a series of legal maneuvers and painful revelations. Rachel watched me read. She didn't offer comfort. She understood that some pain needed space to exist. "They're going to lose," she said finally. "Cases like this, built on entitlement and manipulation, they don't hold up, but it's going to be ugly. I know. Your son is going to sit across from you in a courtroom and lie. I know. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about Marcus at 8, skinning his knee falling off his bike. The way he'd cried, not from pain, but from embarrassment, until I told him everyone falls, what matters is getting back up. I thought about Marcus at 16, failing his first driving test and punching the dashboard in frustration. I thought about all the moments that built a person, wondering where the turn happened, when support became expectation, when gratitude became entitlement. "Yes," I said, "I'm prepared." The trial date was set for November 15th, 7 months after the lawsuit was filed. 7 months of legal fees and sleepless nights. 7 months of not speaking to my son except through lawyers. Friends asked what was happening. I gave vague answers. "How do you explain that your child is suing you? That family has become courtroom adversaries?" Carol asked directly. We'd been friends for 12 years. She taught English at the community college, where I'd taken a writing class after retiring. She had this way of cutting through nonsense, of seeing the truth beneath politeness and evasion. We were having coffee at the diner on 5th Street, the place with the cracked red vinyl booths and coffee that was always slightly too hot, when she said, "You look terrible. What's wrong?" So I told her. Everything. The words came out in a rush, unedited and raw. The lawsuit, the betrayal, the evidence we'd gathered. Carol listened without interrupting, her hands wrapped around her coffee mug, her eyes never leaving mine. "I'm sorry," she said when I finished. "Everyone says that. I mean it, though. I'm sorry you're going through this. I'm sorry Marcus became whatever he's become. And I'm sorry that being a good father wasn't enough." Something in my chest loosened. The acknowledgement, simple and direct, felt like permission to stop defending my choices, to stop wondering if I'd done too much or not enough. Carol reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Her touch was warm, steady. "You're going to be okay," she said. Not today, maybe not for a while, but eventually. I wanted to believe her. The courthouse was old, built in the 1930s with marble floors and brass fixtures that needed polishing. Our courtroom was on the third floor, high ceilings, wooden benches worn smooth by decades of witnesses and spectators. Judge Patricia Reynolds presided. She was in her 60s with silver hair and a reputation for impatience with frivolous lawsuits. Rachel had researched her extensively. She values evidence, Rachel had said. She doesn't like emotional manipulation. Marcus and Jessica sat at the plaintiff's table with their attorney, Gerald Whitmore. He was younger than I expected. Late 30s, expensive suit, the kind of lawyer who looked good in photographs and charged by the minute. He exuded confidence, the false kind that comes from believing your own performance. The trial began with opening statements. Whitmore stood and painted a picture of a father who'd created dependency, who'd established a pattern of support and then cruelly withdrawn it, leaving his son and daughter-in-law in financial ruin. He spoke eloquently about family obligation and reasonable expectations. He made Marcus and Jessica sound like victims of my capriciousness rather than architects of their own greed. Rachel's opening was different, shorter, more direct. She outlined what the evidence would show: a pattern of manipulation, broken promises, and financial irresponsibility. She promised to prove that Marcus and Jessica were not victims, but con artists who'd mistaken family generosity for an unlimited bank account. The judge listened without expression, took notes. When both lawyers sat down, she said, "Let's proceed with testimony." Whitmore called Marcus first. My son walked to the witness stand with his head high. He wore a navy suit, crisp white shirt, conservative tie. He looked respectable, trustworthy. The kind of son any father would be proud of. The kind of son I used to think he was. "Mr. Thompson," Whitmore began, "can you describe your relationship with your father?" "We've always been close," Marcus said. His voice was steady, rehearsed. "He's been my biggest supporter, financially and emotionally. Everything I've achieved, I owe to him." "And did your father make promises regarding ongoing support?" "Absolutely. He always said family takes care of family, that he'd make sure Jessica and I never struggled like he did." "I'd never said that. Never." But Marcus delivered the lie smoothly, his eyes meeting Whitmore's with practiced sincerity. "When did you first discuss the penthouse mortgage?" "Last spring. Dad had been asking when we'd buy a place. He wanted us settled. When we found the perfect apartment, he was thrilled. He said he'd handle the mortgage, that it was his responsibility as a father." The story he told bore no resemblance to reality. In his version, I'd volunteered, insisted even. He made the penthouse sound like my idea, my dream for them. He talked about our agreement as if we'd signed contracts and shaken hands. Whitmore led him through a series of questions designed to make me look like a wealthy patriarch who'd promised the world and then reneged out of spite. Rachel's cross-examination started quietly. "Mr. Thompson, you testified that your father always supported you financially. Is that accurate?" "Yes." "Did you pay him back for your college tuition?" Marcus hesitated, a fraction of a second. "We discussed it. He said it was a gift." "Did you pay him back for the car?" "Same thing, a gift." "The wedding deposit, also a gift." Rachel nodded slowly. She walked to our table and picked up a folder. "I have here 37. Letters you wrote to your father over 15 years. Would you like me to read some of them?" Whitmore stood. "Objection. Relevance." "The letters speak to Mr. Thompson's credibility regarding promises made and kept," Rachel said. "They're highly relevant." "Overruled," Judge Reynolds said. "I'll allow it." Rachel opened the folder, selected a letter. "This is dated June 3rd, 2008. You wrote, 'Dad, I promise I'll pay you back. This is just a loan until I get on my feet.' Were you on your feet when you wrote that?" "I was young, starting out." "You were 22, working full-time, yet you never paid back a single dollar, did you?" "Circumstances changed." "Indeed. Here's another. April 15th, 2012. The money you sent really helped. I won't forget this. I'll make it up to you." "Did you make it up to him?" Marcus's jaw tightened. "I showed gratitude. With more requests for money?" "Objection," Whitmore said. Argumentative. Sustained. Rachel moved on. She systematically went through the letters, each one a promise broken, each one proof of a pattern. Marcus's answers became shorter, sharper. His composure cracked around the edges. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the courtroom's chill. Then Rachel introduced Mike Chen's financial investigation, the gambling debts, the maxed credit cards, the loans from friends. Marcus tried to explain them away. Bad luck, temporary setbacks, investments that didn't pan out, but the numbers didn't lie. 43,000 to casinos, 27,000 in credit card debt, 8 personal loans totaling $62,000. You accumulated over $130,000 in debt, Rachel said, while maintaining a lifestyle that suggested financial success. Isn't that correct? I had income. From what source? Marcus didn't answer immediately. His eyes flicked to Jessica, to Whitmore, back to Rachel. Various sources. Can you name one? Consulting work. For which companies? I don't recall all of them. You don't recall a single client? It was freelance, different projects. Rachel let the silence stretch. Let the jury. No, there was no jury. This was a bench trial. Let the judge see Marcus squirm. Then she said, Your Honor, I'd like to submit tax returns for Marcus Thompson covering the past 3 years. They show no income from consulting work. In fact, they show minimal income from any legitimate source. The documents were admitted. Judge Reynolds examined them. Her expression never changed, but something in the courtroom shifted. The air felt heavier. Jessica testified next. She wore a gray dress suit, conservative, professional. Her makeup was perfect. Her voice was calm. She corroborated Marcus's story, added details about my supposed promises, made herself sound like a responsible adult, caught in circumstances beyond her control. Rachel's cross was surgical. Ms. Thompson, you testified that you and Marcus could afford the penthouse with minimal assistance. Is that accurate? Yes. We just needed help with the down payment. You were employed at the time of the apartment application? Yes. What was your position? Senior Marketing Director at Prestige Brands. Interesting, because Prestige Brands has no record of your employment. Jessica's face went pale. I must have misspoken. It was a different company. Which company? Several companies. I consulted. Rachel pulled out more documents. The fake references, the disconnected phone numbers, the fabricated job history. Each piece of evidence was a hammer blow. Jessica's voice grew smaller. Her confidence evaporated. She'd been unemployed for 8 months while applying for an apartment that required proof of substantial income. You committed fraud, Rachel said simply. Objection. Whitmore was on his feet. That's for the court to decide, not opposing counsel. Withdrawn, Rachel said, but the evidence speaks for itself. The rest of the trial was a formality. Rachel presented the text messages, the conversations where Marcus and Jessica strategized about manipulating me, the guilt works message, the go nuclear response. Judge Reynolds read each one carefully. Her face remained neutral, but her questions became sharper, more probing. Whitmore tried to salvage the case, argued about reasonable expectations and family duty, cited precedents that didn't quite fit. His performance was competent but hollow. You can't polish evidence that's fundamentally rotten. Closing arguments happened on the trial's 3rd day. Whitmore spoke about the sacred bond between father and son, about obligations that transcended legal contracts, about the cruelty of abandonment. He made it sound noble, almost convincing. If you ignored the evidence, Rachel stood, walked to the center of the courtroom. Your Honor, this case is simple. 2 adults accumulated massive debts through gambling and fraud. They attempted to coerce David Thompson into paying for their mistakes by weaponizing family history. They filed a lawsuit based on conversations that never happened and promises that were never made. The evidence is clear. The plaintiff's claims are baseless. We ask that you dismiss this case in its entirety. Judge Reynolds took 20 minutes to deliberate, 20 minutes that felt like hours. The courtroom was silent except for the clock's ticking. Marcus stared at the table. Jessica whispered something to Whitmore. I sat perfectly still, my hands folded, my breathing steady. When Judge Reynolds returned, her expression was stern. "I've reviewed all the evidence presented," she began. "The letters, the financial records, the text messages. These documents paint a very different picture than the plaintiff's claims suggest. Mr. Marcus Thompson testified that his father promised ongoing financial support and created reasonable expectations of continued assistance. However, the evidence shows a pattern of manipulation, broken promises, and financial irresponsibility on the plaintiff's part." She paused, looked directly at Marcus and Jessica. "The court finds no evidence of any verbal agreement obligating David Thompson to pay the mortgage for a penthouse apartment. The plaintiff's claim that previous gifts created an enforceable obligation is without merit. Gifts given freely do not create legal debts. Furthermore, the evidence of fraud in the apartment application and the accumulation of substantial secret debts undermines the plaintiff's credibility." My heart hammered. Rachel's hand on my arm was steady. "The plaintiff's claim is baseless. This lawsuit is dismissed. The defendant is awarded court costs. This case represents a misuse of the judicial system and a betrayal of family trust that this court finds deeply troubling." The gavel struck. Final. Absolute. Marcus's face went white. Jessica grabbed his arm. Whitmore gathered his papers quickly, avoiding eye contact. At the plaintiff's table, folders fell, papers scattered. The careful performance collapsed into chaos. Outside the courthouse, November wind cut through my jacket. The steps were crowded with lawyers and defendants from other cases, all conducting their business in hurried conversations. Carol was waiting by the street. She'd taken the day off to be there. When she saw my face, she smiled. Marcus and Jessica emerged 10 minutes later. They walked slowly, separately, the space between them suddenly visible. No touching, no unified front. Marcus saw me and stopped. For a moment, we just looked at each other. Father and son, strangers. "Dad," he started. His voice cracked. "We were wrong. I'm sorry. We got carried away." Jessica added, "It was a mistake, David. We didn't mean for it to go this far." The apology hung in the cold air. Half-hearted. Too late. Born from defeat rather than genuine remorse. I could have accepted it. Could have tried to rebuild something from the wreckage. Some part of me, the part that remembered teaching him to tie his shoes, wanted to. But the text messages echoed in my head. Guilt works. "Go nuclear." "You lost more than a lawsuit," I said quietly. "You lost me. You built this mess, and you'll live with it." I walked away. Carol fell into step beside me. We didn't speak until we reached her car 3 blocks away. The city noise, traffic and construction and human chaos, filled the silence. "You okay?" she asked. "No." The word came out raw, honest. "But I will be." The weeks after the trial were strange, quiet. Friends called to congratulate me on the victory, but it didn't feel like winning, more like surviving. I'd saved my money and my dignity, but the cost was my son. Some prices can't be calculated on a balance sheet. Marcus and Jessica's social media went silent. No more photos of the penthouse. No more posts about their perfect life. Friends who'd admired their success suddenly had questions. How could they afford that apartment? Why did they sue David? The whispers spread through their social circle like cracks through glass. The penthouse became a prison, beautiful and expensive and hollow. They could barely afford the monthly payments. Every room was a reminder of their failure, of their greed. I didn't follow their decline obsessively, but information filtered through mutual acquaintances. Marcus took a job he hated. Jessica's social invitations dried up. The life they'd tried to force me to fund crumbled under its own weight. I sold my house in March. 32 years of memories packed into boxes and moved to a smaller condo closer to downtown. The place had floor-to-ceiling windows, ironic given everything, and a view of the river. Starting over at 61 felt absurd and liberating in equal measure. Carol helped me unpack. We worked in comfortable silence, finding places for books and kitchen supplies. She'd become more than a friend, more than support during the trial. We'd started having dinner twice a week, taking walks, talking about things beyond lawsuits and betrayal. She made me laugh, made me remember that life existed beyond family drama. "What's next?" she asked one evening. We were on my new balcony watching the sunset paint the river golden pink. "Travel," I said. "I always wanted to see the Pacific Northwest. Maybe take that writing workshop in Oregon you mentioned. We could go together." We could. The word hung between us, full of possibility, of new beginnings built on honesty rather than obligation. I thought about Marcus sometimes, wondered if he'd learned anything, if the experience had changed him or just made him bitter. I didn't reach out, didn't send birthday cards or Christmas gifts. The chapter was closed. Some relationships can't be salvaged. Some betrayals cut too deep for forgiveness to bridge the gap. But I wasn't bitter. Angry, yes, hurt, certainly. But beneath the pain was something else. Relief, freedom. For 40 years, I'd defined myself by my role as Marcus's father. Provider, supporter, safety net. The lawsuit had severed that identity, and in the severing came unexpected liberation. I wasn't just Marcus's father anymore. I was David Thompson, 61 years old, survivor of a frivolous lawsuit, friend to Carol, student of writing, lover of sunsets and good coffee and quiet mornings. The $550,000 lawsuit had been meant to break me, to force me into submission through fear and financial pressure. Instead, it had broken the chains of misplaced loyalty. It had revealed truths I'd been avoiding, that love without respect is worthless, that family isn't defined by blood alone, that saying no can be an act of self-preservation rather than selfishness. I won more than a court case. I won myself back. 1 year after the trial, I received a letter. Handwritten. Marcus's writing. I recognized it immediately. The same scrawl that had written, "I promise I'll pay you back 15 times across 15 years. I held the envelope for a long time, debated throwing it away unopened. But curiosity won. Inside was a single page, short, direct. "Dad, I know you probably won't read this. I wouldn't blame you. I've spent the past year trying to understand what we did, how we got to that courthouse. The therapist Jessica and I are seeing says I have issues with entitlement, with boundaries. She's probably right. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry, really sorry, not because we lost, but because we were wrong. I lost my father because I couldn't see past my own selfishness. That's on me. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're happy. You deserve that. Marcus." I read it twice, felt nothing but a distant sadness, like hearing about a tragedy that happened to someone else. The apology was probably genuine. Therapy prompted, but genuine. It changed nothing. Some bridges once burned can't be rebuilt. The foundation is too damaged. I didn't write back. Carol and I went to Oregon in September. Spent 2 weeks hiking through forests so green they looked artificial. Attended the writing workshop. Met people who knew nothing about my lawsuit or my son. People who saw me as just David. It was refreshing, freeing. We stayed in a cabin near the coast. Listened to waves crash against rocks. Talked about the future. "Do you regret it?" Carol asked one night. "Fighting back?" "No, not even a little." I thought about it, really thought. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that Marcus became someone who would sue his own father. But fighting back? No, I don't regret that. Some battles have to be fought. She nodded. Understood. Carol had her own history with family betrayal. A sister who'd stolen their mother's jewelry. A father who'd chosen alcohol over his children. We all carry scars. The question is whether they define us or refine us. At 61, I chose refinement. The story doesn't have a fairy tale ending. Marcus and I don't reconcile over Thanksgiving dinner. Jessica doesn't apologize tearfully and mean it. The penthouse doesn't get foreclosed in poetic justice. Life is messier than that, more ambiguous. Marcus and Jessica kept their apartment, struggled but survived. I kept my freedom. Struggled in different ways but survived. The victory wasn't in their punishment. It was in my liberation. The lawsuit had been their nuclear option, their attempt to force me into compliance through legal intimidation. When it failed, they lost their power. Not their money or their apartment. Those were secondary. They lost the power to manipulate me through guilt, through family obligation, through the weight of shared history, and I gained something invaluable, the knowledge that I could stand firm, that boundaries were possible, that saying no didn't make me a bad father. It made me a person worthy of respect. The $550,000 number became symbolic, not just of their greed, but of my breaking point, the exact amount where I finally said enough, where I chose myself over the comfortable fiction that family always comes first. Family comes first when it's built on love and respect. When it's built on manipulation and entitlement, it's not family. It's a hostage situation. I think about that sometimes. How many people stay hostage because leaving feels cruel? Because family is supposed to be forever? Because saying no feels like betrayal? But staying in a toxic relationship, even with your own child, isn't noble. It's slow suicide. It's teaching them that consequences don't exist, that love is limitless and unconditional even when weaponized. The trial taught me that love should have conditions, basic conditions like honesty and respect and reciprocity. Without those, it's not love. It's exploitation wearing love's mask. Carol and I got engaged in December. Small ceremony planned for spring. Nothing elaborate, just the two of us and a handful of friends. No family drama, no obligation invites, just people who genuinely cared about our happiness. Marcus wouldn't be there. Neither would Jessica. That fact didn't hurt as much as I thought it would. The wound had scarred over, still sensitive, but no longer bleeding. Someone asked me once if I'd do anything differently, if I'd change my approach to raising Marcus. Give less money, set firmer boundaries earlier. I said no, because hindsight is deceptive. In the moment, I was doing what felt right, supporting my child, helping him succeed. I couldn't have known it would breed entitlement, couldn't have predicted the lawsuit. We do our best with the information we have. Sometimes our best isn't enough. Sometimes our children make choices we can't control. What I could control was my response. When Marcus and Jessica came with their lawsuit, I could have caved, paid the mortgage to keep the peace. Many people would have. Many people do. They sacrifice themselves on the altar of family harmony, slowly eroding their own worth to avoid conflict. I chose differently, chose myself, chose the discomfort of confrontation over the slow death of compliance. That choice saved me, not just financially, though that mattered, but spiritually. It reminded me that I had value beyond my usefulness, that being a father didn't mean being an ATM, that relationships should flow both ways. The lawsuit was Marcus's biggest mistake, not because he lost, but because it revealed who he'd become, stripped away the pretense, showed me the truth I'd been avoiding. In a twisted way, I'm grateful for it, not for the pain or the expense or the months of legal stress, but for the clarity, for the permission to let go. People talk about closure like it's a destination, a place you reach and then stay. But closure is ongoing, a choice you make repeatedly. Each day I choose not to call Marcus, not to check his social media, not to wonder if reconciliation is possible. Each day I choose peace over chaos, freedom over obligation. That's the real victory. The lawsuit cost Marcus more than money. It cost him his father, his integrity, his reputation. Those losses are permanent. Money can be earned back. Apartments can be sold. But trust, once shattered, rarely fully heals. I don't hate him. Hate requires too much energy. I just don't have room for him in my life anymore. That space is filled with Carol, with new friends, with hobbies and plans and a future unburdened by manipulation. Sometimes I see fathers with their adult children and feel a pang. Wonder what it would be like if Marcus had been different, if he'd been grateful instead of entitled, if he'd valued our relationship more than my wallet. But those thoughts pass quickly, replaced by gratitude for what I have, rather than mourning what I lost. Because what I lost wasn't worth keeping. It was the illusion, a relationship built on conditional affection and financial transactions. What I have now is real, messy and imperfect and real. Carol knows my flaws and stays anyway. My new friends like me for me, not for what I can provide. The writing group critiques my work honestly. Nothing is transactional. Nothing is conditional on my usefulness. That's what freedom feels like. The story ends not with Marcus's redemption, but with mine. Not with reconciliation, but with recognition. Recognition that some relationships are toxic, that blood doesn't obligate tolerance, that walking away can be an act of self-love rather than abandonment. I'm 62 now, starting a new chapter, writing more, traveling more, living more. The $550,000 lawsuit that was supposed to destroy me instead became my liberation, my transformation, my proof that it's never too late to choose yourself, to say no, to demand respect. Marcus and Jessica learned an expensive lesson. Entitlement has consequences. Manipulation has limits. Family is earned, not assumed. I learned something else. Freedom is worth fighting for. Self-respect is non-negotiable. And sometimes the greatest act of love is letting go. The judgment is final. The case is closed. But the real victory continues every day I wake up free from obligation, free from guilt, free from the weight of being someone's solution to their problems. I'm just David now, not Marcus's father, not Jessica's bank, just David, Carol's partner, writing student, future traveler, person, and that person is enough. This victory wasn't about the money or the legal precedent or teaching Marcus a lesson. It was about teaching myself, one, that I matter, that my boundaries matter, that my life has value beyond what I can give others. That's the victory that counts. That's the justice that endures. Not revenge, not punishment. Just the simple, profound act of choosing yourself when everyone else expects you to choose them. Of standing firm when standing firm costs everything. Of recognizing that some prices are too high, even, especially, when family's asking. The lawsuit ended in November. My new life began in December. The timing feels symbolic. Old things dying, new things growing. Nature's rhythm playing out in courtrooms and relationships. Marcus planted entitlement and reaped isolation. I planted boundaries and reaped freedom. We both got what we earned, and I sleep better now than I have in years. No middle-of-the-night anxiety about the next request. No wondering when the next crisis will require my wallet's intervention. Just sleep, deep and dreamless and peaceful. The sleep of someone who knows they made the right choice. The hard choice. The choice that cost them a son but saved them their soul. If you're reading this and facing something similar, a family member who takes more than they give, who weaponizes love, who makes you feel guilty for having boundaries, know this. It's okay to say no. It's okay to walk away. It's okay to choose yourself. The people who truly love you will understand. The ones who don't, they were never loving you. They were loving what you could do for them. That's not love. That's exploitation. And you deserve better. I did. I do. And I'm living proof that standing up for yourself, even against family, even when it costs everything, is worth it. Because what you gain, peace, freedom, self-respect, is worth more than any relationship built on guilt and obligation. The $550,000 lawsuit was meant to break me. Instead, it made me whole. That's not just victory. That's justice. Real justice. The kind that changes lives. The kind that reminds us we're worth fighting for. That our stories matter. That our choices define us more than our relationships. That sometimes losing family means finding yourself. And finding yourself, that's worth everything. If you like this story, please like this video. Subscribe to the channel and share your impressions in the comments below.